So now we will jump into the fourth theme, which is shame and gender-based violence. So I know that we've touched upon the topic of shame a few times, and shame is something that we all go through. And I guess it impacts all of us in different shapes and forms, but also is one of the prominent reasons why people don't talk about violence they are facing, whether the emotional, physical, or sexual kind, to their close relatives, families, friends, etc. So when I wanted to actually bring in some thoughts from Brene Brown, who's a shame researcher. She spent like over 12 years studying shame, and I felt like some of the things she talked about shame was really interesting, and then we can go into how does shame show up with gender-based violence. So when she talks about shame, she says that shame derives its power from being unspeakable. That's why it loves perfectionists. If we cultivate enough awareness around shame to name it and speak to it, we basically cut it off at the knees. Shame hates having words wrapped around it. If we speak shame, it begins to wither. Just the way exposure to light was deadly for the gremlins in the Game of Thrones, language and story bring light to shame and destroy it. So 3 things that she talks about shame are, the first is that we all have shame. So there's nothing like people who don't suffer from shame. Where is the rest of it? 1 second. Yeah, we all have shame. Shame is universal and one of the most primitive human emotions that we experience. The only people who don't experience shame lack the capacity for empathy and human connection. So you don't want to be in that boat. We are all afraid. Yeah. So.
That's alexithymia, where you don't have any emotions. You don't want to.
You don't want to be in that boat. Yeah. And then the other thing is we're all afraid to talk about shame because it's scary. It requires us to be very vulnerable. And the less we talk about shame, the more it has control on our lives. So I thought that was quite powerful. And so, yeah, let's talk about shame and how does that, impact gender-based violence.
Okay. So is there a specific question that you want to ask me or prompt me to kind of
talking to? Yeah, so I guess where I was going with this was we talk about how a lot of the times people don't talk about the violence they're going through because of how will they be perceived in society. Especially we see that in Sri Lanka a lot, which is why people are more closed. They don't want to open up. And I feel like, yeah, a lot of that is probably down to shame and not wanting to bring shame to themselves or their families. Yeah, so that is the area I wanted to explore. Even we talked about divorce being considered a taboo. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I think shame and fear are 2 emotions that keep one from, seeking help to begin with. And I think that's a very good point that you brought in, because you see that a lot in Sri Lanka, because they're very, very, I think we're all guilty of this. We do present ourselves in certain ways that we don't want our image to be tarnished, right? Whether it may be totally out of our control and totally external, and so sometimes perhaps maybe we don't want to talk about it because we think, okay, it's going to affect our self-perceptions about ourselves and then what people think about us. But like you said, it is a universal emotion. Everybody at some point in their life has gone through shame. Personally, I have, because when I was a kid, I was bullied. And I did feel a lot of shame because I couldn't stand up for myself. I was a child. And that was a very bad experience for me, which is one reason why, amongst others, I got into psychology to begin with. And quite recently, I don't want to delve too much into it, I did have external threats from, people for simply talking about a community issue. And I told no one. And that was not only out of shame, that was also out of fear. And so I do understand why individuals would not want to talk about it, but I think it's very important to confide in someone you trust. That latter half of it is extremely important. Who do you trust? So it's not only about seeking behavior, help-seeking behavior. It's about who you go to. So if you feel that you can't confide in somebody who's a friend or who's family, then please seek professional help, because then there's at least that sense of psychological safety, security, confidentiality, so to speak, where you are at least talking to somebody and you know that it's not going to come back to you, and put you at risk. So I would say that's one way to go about it. And like you mentioned, the reason individuals, especially when in a country like Sri Lanka, where society there are gendered norms, and these norms are kind of enriched in society, it's very difficult. Everyone likes to keep it inside, and that's not healthy. It's very unhealthy. So I think shame is universal. Everybody at some point in their life has gone through it. And it's okay to acknowledge and accept it, as long as you are getting help that you need. And also it depends on the circumstance as well. So we can't put in a blanket statement there, because we don't know why they're feeling ashamed. So it's very important to get to the why of it, to kind of figure out how you're gonna get the help that you need.
Yeah, so I think you mentioned a few, like some things I really wanted to touch on. One is about talking about shame. Even what Brene Brown says is, when you add language and story to shame, you help dissolve it, you cut it at its knees, you look at it. And it is important who you approach with to talk to, because if the first thing is that a lot of people, they don't know how to do these conversations. So if someone comes, I know a lot of friends, or even like especially male friends, they don't know how to handle like the topics sometimes, and they might say something unknowingly, unintentionally, which may take you back into that feeling of shame, or might make it worse for you. So they are both the things. One is for people who want to support people going through this, like understanding how can they support, what are the things that they need to say, how can they build that empathy, where they're actually trying to put themselves in those shoes, and instead of saying that, oh no, you poor thing, or say certain statements which make them feel worse. And then the second thing is that, yes, if you don't have that support around you, then to feel okay to go and seek help, because there's also a lot of shame around seeking help from either a therapist or a psychologist. And I feel like in the world today, everyone has been to therapy at some point, and it is an amazing way to voice out what's going on in your head, and have another person, bring in their perspective. Also, when you go to a therapist or a psychologist, like, they're not personally related to you, so you can have that very confidential conversation, and the person doesn't have any vested interest in telling you this way or that way. So yeah.
Yeah, and what you highlighted was spot on, because a lot of people think that, okay, going to a psychologist, a therapist, means that you have something wrong with you. No, it's so not, right? It's about nipping something in the bud. why is it so different to go and see, let's say, for example, a cardiologist when you feel heart pain or chest pain, right? Or even hand pain? What's the difference in seeing somebody, to talk about something that's distressing you? So this is all developed by society. And so people wait till prevention is cure when it comes to anything, right? And that includes mental health. A lot of people, when you talk about mental health in Sri Lanka and abroad, it's still stigmatized and there's taboo around the topic. But that's because you can't see it. See, when there is any other issue, a disability, right, so to speak, you can see it. So, you feel there's that empathy. So if, let's say, for example, you break your leg, right, or you injure your hand, it's visible. So you feel sorry, you help the person, you even offer a cup of coffee. Can I, you would say, can I get this for you? But look at people who are, if you take the famous comedians, celebrities, right? Chester Bennington, you take Robin Williams, Kurt Cobain.
Just give me one second. Okay, yeah, we can continue.
So Robin Williams, Kurt Cobain, and Chester Bennington. You can't see it. They're celebrities, you can't see it. And they took their own lives, right? So of course there are underlying reasons, perhaps from the past, but still, I guess the point I'm trying to convey is that just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there.